Welcome to Tech Notice, my friends. So for the last 6 months, behind the scenes, I've been benchmarking every single one of the RTX 30 series GPUs for creators. So I've gone through 12 separate graphics cards, and if you are wondering which graphics card is the best for your workflow, or how does each of the graphics cards work in specific application, and which one should you be getting, and is it worth for an upgrade, and how much performance gain there is, then this video is exactly for you. So there's over 1,000 benchmarks that I have ran to make accurate data, and now here finally I have the results for you. So if you're a creator, you should be excited. Let's jump right in. Squarespace helps you to take your business to the next level by creating your own web presence. Perhaps finally you can launch that passion project you've been putting off for so long. Creating a website through Squarespace is as simple as playing with Legos. They've got tons of high quality custom templates that you can adjust to fit your style. Whether you want to sell your product online, take bookings, or have a professional online portfolio, Squarespace websites give you the access to all the important analytics and SEO tools to make sure that your story reaches as many people as possible. If you still feel like you need help with your website, Squarespace prides itself with 24/7 customer service. Learn more about Squarespace and their free trial in the description below. Go to squarespace.com/technotice to get a 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring this video. So which graphics cards in specific are we comparing? First of all, I want to say a big thank you to the actual manufacturers who have borrowed or lent those graphics cards for me, especially Asus, who have lent me like majority of these graphics cards. Then secondly, ZOTAC, who have lent a big portion as well, and then MSI, who lent the RTX 3060 Ti. Now in specific, the graphics cards we have here, or what I have tested from the lowest, is Asus RTX 3050 Dual OC, ZOTAC RTX 3060 Twin Edge OC, MSI RTX 3060 Ti Gaming X Trio, ZOTAC RTX 3070 Twin Edge OC, ZOTAC RTX 3070 Ti Halo, Asus X Noctua RTX 3080 10G LHR as well. By the way, if you see LHR for creators, it doesn't really matter. There's no performance difference for creators. ZOTAC RTX 3080 12GB version Trinity LHR, Asus TUF RTX 3080 Ti. This is the 350W TGP. ZOTAC RTX 3080 Ti Amp Extreme Halo or Holo. This is a 400W TGP, so overclocked a little bit. Asus TUF RTX 3090, Asus TUF RTX 3090 Ti, which is 450W TGP, and then MSI RTX 3090 Ti Supreme X, which is 480W TGP. So as you can see, some of the graphics card I have two separate options. For example, an OC option as well. So from the factory, it actually comes with much bigger power draw. For example, the 3080 Ti and 3090 Ti, which we have a little bit extra, like 50W extra on the ZOTAC RTX 3080 Ti compared to the Asus TUF RTX 3080 Ti. And then on the 3090 Ti, the Asus TUF and MSI RTX 3090 Ti have a 30W difference in there. Also now the Testbench Setup, which I have over here. I'm not sure if you remember this build that we did. This is like the photographer's build. But basically the parts here then are for motherboard, Asus ProArt B660 Creator motherboard with DDR4. For RAM, we're using the 2x Kingston Fury Beast RGB 3600MHz CL18. For GPU, then obviously all those GPUs that I just mentioned. For cooler, this is the Deepcool Castle EX White 360mm cooler. For CPU, we're using the Intel i7-12700, and obviously it doesn't have any power limits, so it doesn't pull down like in their, TDP. It's like open power limits. For OS SSD, we have Samsung 980 Pro 1TB version. For benchmark SSD, we're running the Kingston NV1 500GB in there as well, which is plenty fast to actually read all the benchmarks as well. For power supply, we're using the Deepcool PQ1000M power supply, and the case here is Deepcool CK560 white version. So the funny thing is, the reason I have the actual cooler mounted on top of the, actual PC is because some of the GPUs were longer and couldn't fit inside the case. And I thought this also is gonna help me not to have any bottlenecks in the CPU compartment. Just if the, GPU gets very, very warm and it's gonna heat the radiator up and just, starts to maybe pull a little bit down on the CPU performance. So now the CPU is performing always the same, and the graphics card doesn't affect the CPU performance. If you do want to check out the latest pricing of this test bench setup or pick any of those parts up, as well as the GPUs I mentioned in this video, what I have tested, then check them out in the links in the description below. So then let's start to look at then some of the benchmarks. First of all, looking at Geekbench 5, and in here we have the CUDA, Vulkan, and OpenCL scores, and I'm gonna breeze through a little bit over here. We're gonna go more in detail about like some other benchmarks that I have done and which really makes sense, but this is very generic and synthetic benchmark just to see kind of where do these GPUs line up. And as you can see in here, they scale pretty well. Like in CUDA scores, there's nothing really different here. Interestingly, the Noctua 10GB version of RTX 3080 is performing quite a bit better here than the ZOTAC 3080, which is 12GB version. And then also the RTX 3080 Ti can perform better in the CUDA scores, about 5% better compared to the 3090, just because it is a little bit faster, you know, RAM, and it's overclocked and so on. And when looking at the Vulkan scores, very similar results here. Although I do want to say that this, interestingly here, the Asus TUF RTX 3090 here is getting quite a low score in Vulkan scores. But I do want to say that this Geekbench 5 Vulkan scores, I've always had to run a lot of different tests because the Vulkan scores go all over. You can score very low and very high, so I wouldn't worry this here. But interestingly, the average of about 7-8 benchmarks, that's where it lands there. In OpenCL, a benchmark of Geekbench 5, very similar, you know, kind of results. And there's just a bit of a gap after the 3070 Ti. There's 3070 Ti, and then from 3080 all the way to 3090 Ti, they're like kind of two separate kind of categories. From 3050 to 3070 Ti, you kind of jump very nicely up in terms of the scaling, but then 3080 is on another level, quite a big difference there, about 17% difference there, and then starts to go another like ladder up or steps up quite equally. So now then the actual performance of, you know, real world applications. And I do want to mention that the way I have done these benchmarks is I'm running the benchmark quite a few times, like at least 5 to 8 times, sometimes even more. And then I'm going to kind of sort out some of the completely odd benchmarks, if it was very high or very low, because obviously they are kind of out of the ordinary. And then I'm going to just delete those and then calculate the average of kind of the benchmarks where like most of the benchmarks will go. And that's how we can get the most accurate data for these results then. So in Monster Scene, Blender 3.1, we can see that the scaling of the RTX GPUs is quite good. So almost the more you pay, the more performance you can get. Obviously, in the end, the return on your investment in terms of performance starts to, you know, decrease, and that's always the case. But from 3050 to all the way to 3090 Ti with the overclocked version, they line up exactly like that as you would expect. And there's no like kind of surprises over here. So in Blender, in the Monster Scene, that's what it is. If you're looking at the charts, and the difference here again is between the 3070 Ti and 3080, there is quite a big of a jump. There's about 18% difference. So if you're thinking about, you know, the 3070 Ti and looking at 3080, then here in Blender, there is quite a big of a jump there in terms of performance. In Junkshop Scene on Blender 3.1, very similar results. In here we do see that the Asus RTX 3080 Ti is performing slightly better than the TUF 3090, but they're within like 1% of each other. Like the 3080 Ti, 400 watt TGP, 350 watt RTX 3080 Ti and 3090, they are all within like 0.5% of each other. So they perform really same. Although this scene of the Blender doesn't actually saturate the VRAM of the RTX 3090, so the 3090 will have an edge over the 3080 Ti's just because it has double the VRAM. So if you are, you know, considering like something for the 3D, then definitely the 3090 is a better option there. The 3090 Ti will have actually extra 5 to 8% increase in performance in terms of the performance. So if you do find find the 3090 and 3090 Ti about the same price range, then the 3090 Ti does offer, you know, a measurable jump in the 3D or Blender performance, 3D rendering performance. On the lower side of things, from 3050 to 3070 Ti, it's very equal kind of jumps up. There is quite a measurable jump from 3050 to 3060 as well, but bear in mind the 3050 now is a very, very, very affordable price. So if you are on a budget, then the 3050 is quite impressive. In fact, if you actually measure the Blender performance, the 3050 is much better than the M1 Ultra from Apple. That is a 64-core GPU. The 3050 is much better. Blender classroom scene now here. Again, looking at the charts, very similar thing. Quite a big jump from 3050 to 3060, and then quite a big of a jump from 3070 Ti to 3080. But everything lines up very, very well. The scaling is very good in the classroom scene as well. In terms of 3D rendering performance, if we conclude this here a little bit, then the GPU kind of scaling is quite big. There is a jump between 3050 to 3060, and another big jump between the 3070 Ti, 3070 to 3080. There's a big jump, but then from 3080 to 3090 Ti, it scales quite even steps up and up and up and up. But I do want to say that if you are considering something for 3D rendering, then the RTX 3090 has a bit of an edge just because it has double the VRAM compared to the 3080s. So 3090s and 3090 Ti's and 3080s and 3080 Ti's, there's a VRAM difference. So I'd probably go for 3090 if your budget allows that. Now moving on to photo editing and specifically Adobe Photoshop. This is an interesting thing here. We're going to measure the overall score and also the GPU score because this benchmark has a separate things, and I've pulled these out kind of looking at two separate aspects. I'm looking at the overall score just to see how does the GPU difference affect the overall score. And as you can see, between the 3050 and the 3090 Ti, the price difference is huge, but the performance difference is about 3.8%, and that's at maximum. If you also consider the margin of error and take 1-2% off each other, then the RTX 3050 and 3090 Ti perform like within 1-2% of each other. And the same thing is in the GPU scores. Obviously the GPU score difference now here is a little bit more. So the 3050 is about 8% slower than the 3090 Ti, but everything in the middle, probably from like 3060 to 3090 even, perform very, very much the same. Now, interestingly, this here is showing very well that the GPU performance here doesn't really matter for Photoshop. As you can see, the RTX 3060 Ti performs within 0.5% of the 3090 Ti, which is just absolutely mind-boggling and mind-blowing to me. And honestly, this is not an error of the benchmarks. This is like an average of a lot of different benchmarks. So to see the RTX 3060 Ti perform so well, to me, in photo editing applications for Photoshop and Lightroom, the GPU really doesn't matter. If it's only photo editing you do, I'd highly recommend going with RTX 3050. If you do some other things and, you know, you've got a mixed workflow, then obviously, you know, measure the performance on the other applications that actually can utilize the GPU. But if you're wondering which GPU is better for Photoshop, it doesn't really matter. And the same thing is with Lightroom Classic, Adobe Lightroom Classic. You don't need to worry about which GPU you have. Just any of these will do fine for you. You probably want to just know which monitors you're going to run and so on. And all of these GPUs can run 4K, multiple 4K monitors, even the 3050 can. So you don't need to worry about that. Okay, just a quick note over here. Since publishing or making this video, Adobe has actually released an update to Lightroom Classic where GPU export acceleration is actually supported. So you can get a little bit more of a GPU boost now on the exports, but how much? Stay tuned for that. We'll have to test that out in another video. Now, there are some other photo editing applications that some higher-end photographers might use that can utilize the CUDA and RTX scores a little bit more. So if this is part of your workflow, like Affinity Photo or something like that, then get a little bit of a higher-end graphics card. But still, I'd say for photo editing, graphics card really doesn't make a difference. Let's move on to video editing. And firstly, we're looking at Adobe Premiere Pro. First of all, the extended overall score. As you can see, there is a bit of a jump between the 3050 and 3060. As you can see, there's about 9% difference. But then from about 3060 to even RTX 3080 Ti and 3090, there is about 15% difference, 14-15% difference, and it kind of jumps up a few percent here, a few percent here, and equally a few percent as you get higher and higher and higher here. But interestingly, like the 3060, 3070 and 3060 Ti, they perform about the same as each other, because you can see the 3060 Ti actually performs better than the 3070. The 3070 Ti is a little bit better again, but then there is slight gap between 3070 Ti and 3080, especially because the VRAM now goes up and you have a little bit more, you know, kind of video memory to work with, and then slightly jumps up there. The 3090 Ti's and 3080 Ti's, they pretty much perform the same, but that's the extended overall score now. If we are diving a little bit deeper inside the GPU performance, and this is specifically GPU effects performance, so which GPU can like apply GPU effects better. So in Premiere Pro, that would be like lumetri color and some of the transitions, and if you're doing a lot of color grading, for example, then this is very important aspect over here which would perform better. But also bear in mind, this doesn't kind of measure which is better in terms of the VRAM. If you're working with more footage and very complex timelines, for example 6K and 8K footage and so on, then having more than 8 gigabytes of VRAM is essential for you, because that really starts to be the bottleneck of your performance as well. So the GPU scores, the 3050 and 3060, there is a bit of a jump over there, 9% difference. Then 3060 and 3060 Ti, there's quite a bit of a jump over there as well, about 5% difference. Then 3060 and 3070, they perform quite a bit the same. 3070 Ti now, again, compared to the 3070, there is 3% difference. And now again, what we can see is 3070 Ti and 3080, and there is about 6% difference, so a little bit of a bigger difference there. Then 3080 12G or 3080 Ti, in fact even the 3090, they perform about the same, not real difference there. And then the 3090 Ti adds an extra few percent there. Bear in mind, my actual benchmark system here is bottlenecked by the CPU performance, and if you remove the CPU bottleneck a little bit more, like run like a Threadripper system or something like that in the benchmarks, you'd probably see a little bit of a bit bigger like gap between those CPUs, and maybe the 3090 Ti's would perform a little bit better in there, especially if you really hammer those things and create more multiple like GPU effects within and layers on top of each other. Then you would see that's a bit more. But hey, I don't have the cash to actually have a Threadripper system just for these bench setups, so I'll have to have something a bit more affordable. So I'd say a 3080 is a big jump from 3070 Ti, and the 3090 and 3090 Ti's, they're right up there in terms of the best, GPUs there. In terms of just the GPU effects, the 3080 Ti with the OC BIOS with 400 watt TGP is actually the best, or on top of the charts, performing even better than the 480 watt RTX 3090 Ti. But said that, I would still go with the RTX 3090 Ti if you can afford both of them, just because of the double VRAM, and if you're using complex, editing timelines, that will be a benefit for you. Now, Adobe After Effects and the overall score. The interesting thing is, straight away, what I see is the MSI RTX 3090 Ti 480 watt TGP is on the bottom of the charts there, performing about a few percent, like 2% better than the 3070, and even the 3060 Ti is about a few percent better than the 3090 Ti. To me, that just shows that the After Effects can't quite utilize the graphics power of the 3090 Ti, and that's why some of them perform like all over the place. Also, the 3090 Ti is very, very hot, like much hotter than the other things. Even though my, CPU cooler is outside of the case, it is affected by the cooler and the CPU, so possibly even the cooling will maybe heated up the VRMs of the motherboard or something like that. That's why it's performing so much slower. So if you are running the 3090 Ti's and After Effects is kind of part of your workflow, I'd recommend very good airflow of the case, so make sure that your GPU is cooled down quite a bit. But that's the overall score, which doesn't actually measure the GPU score, as you can see in a moment. So overall score, after like 3070, they're very much the same. If you're looking at the 3090 Ti, or everything from kind of 3060 Ti to 3090, there's only a 3% difference overall score. So it doesn't make a big difference in terms of the GPU used for After Effects. It's more the actual CPU and RAM and how much you have that and how fast that is for After Effects. So if you're looking at the GPU score in specific, so that's where we're doing some of the FX and GPU score, where the CPU and RAM and other bits of the PC don't matter that much. We can see that the 3050 and 3060, there's a huge jump there, almost 20% jump in terms of performance. Then 3060 and 3060 Ti, there's another big jump there, about 8%. Then from 3070 to 3070 Ti is another big jump, probably because, you know, the actual clock speeds and the VRM is faster in the 3070 Ti. There's about 7% difference there. From 3070 Ti to 3080, there's about 5% difference. So quite a big of a jump there as well. But then from 3080 to 3080 12G, about 2%. And then from 3080 to all the way 3090 Ti, there's about 3% difference. But now, as you can see here, in the overall GPU score, the MSI that was scoring low in the overall score, if you look at just the GPU score, it is the best GPU that you can get. So in terms of just GPU performance, the 3090 Ti from MSI is the best in there. And as you can see, they line up pretty well there. The 1380 Ti with 400 watt TGP is performing slightly better than the 1390 there, but I'd still see an edge or benefit of the 1390 just because of the VRAM capacity. Moving on to DaVinci Resolve and looking at the extended overall score, you can see that the scores are pretty much the same from about 3080 Ti all the way to 3090 Ti. And the 3080 is slightly slower than the 3080 12G. So the 10G version is about 3% slower. Then there is like kind of steps up from 3060 to 3080, 3070, 3070 Ti and so on. Bear in mind, 3060 Ti and 3070, they perform very similar in here. But there is a big jump between 3050 and 3060 Ti, which is about 12%, as you can see here, especially because the 3060 Ti has 12 gigabytes of VRAM rather than 8 that we have there on the 3050. Looking at just the GPU effects here in DaVinci Resolve, now we can see a big jumps in terms of which GPU you use. So from 3050 to 3060 Ti, there's about 14% difference, which is quite a big jump. From 3060 to 3060 Ti, just GPU effects, there is about 11% difference. So if you look at 3050 to 3060 Ti, there is almost double the performance there, or getting close to double performance, which is a big jump there. So from 3060 Ti to 3070, there's a 3% jump. From 3070 to 3070 Ti is a 10% jump. So that's another big jump there. If you're using DaVinci Resolve, you can see that the faster VRAM of the 3070 Ti will make a difference. And then now also from 3070 Ti to 3080, we're gaining extra 2 gigabytes of VRAM, but also more CUDA cores and so on, different GPU. We are gaining 13% in performance. So there's a big jump there between 3070 Ti and 3080. In terms of 3080 10G and 12G, there is about 6% difference, which just shows how much DaVinci Resolve likes the VRAM capacity. The more VRAM you have for DaVinci Resolve, the better it is. Just so you know, if you didn't know this, DaVinci Resolve prefers to have more VRAM rather than RAM. So having a little bit less RAM on DaVinci Resolve isn't that big of a deal, but having less VRAM on DaVinci Resolve is a big deal. In terms of Premiere Pro, how the program works, Premiere Pro likes to have more RAM and is not so bothered about the VRAM of the GPU. Obviously, when you go higher resolution clips, then it does make a difference. But in terms of overall application or software performance, having more RAM in Premiere Pro makes a bigger difference than in DaVinci Resolve, and having more VRAM in DaVinci Resolve makes a bigger difference in DaVinci Resolve compared to Premiere Pro. From 3080 12G to 3080 Ti, there's a few percent difference, about 3% and so on. Interestingly, about 5% difference in the overclocked version of 3080 Ti. If you look at just the 3080 Ti and the overclocked version, 50 watts extra from ZOTAC, that gains us about 5% in performance, which is amazing, and is actually performing within 1% of the 3090 in terms of just GPU performance. But the normal 3080 Ti with 350 watt TGP compared to 3090, there is about 5% performance increase. But bear in mind, the VRAM will be better in overall performance. That will actually affect the overall performance there as well. From 3090 to 3090 Ti, there is an extra 5% that you can gain. But interestingly here, the overclocked version of MSI RTX 3090 Ti, which is 480 watts compared to the 450, didn't perform better, and the actual 450 watt Asus TUF RTX 3090 was the best GPU there. So from 3090 from Asus to 3090 Ti, we can gain extra 5% roughly there. So in terms of video editing GPUs, what GPUs can you get, or what will make the difference? Depending which program you use, like I mentioned, DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro, bear in mind the VRAM difference and RAM difference there. And also consider your workflow. Which resolution of clips do you use? Do you use higher resolution, then more VRAM, and probably lean towards the 3080 there? But also at the same time, if you are not doing a lot of color grading, for example, and you're not doing a lot of complex timelines, perhaps you're doing more simpler, just clips on top of each other, and you're using mirrorless camera footage, then even the RTX 3050 is a very, very good pick for you. You will gain quite a bit of performance with 3060 and 3060 Ti and so on. But bear in mind, there is like from 3060 to 3070 Ti, they're all kind of like in the middle ground over there. Just look at the pricing, check out the latest pricing in the description below. That's kind of the mid-range GPUs there. And what I would consider there is how much you do GPU effects. Like if you do crazy, I don't know, music videos that are absolutely packed full of After Effects, and then at the same time GPU effects inside Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, using lots of things like that, and then the faster VRAM will make a difference, and going with 3070 Ti, for example, might be worth it for you. Maybe perhaps even jump to 3080 over there. Just some of the recommendations there. The best for video editing still is the RTX 3090 Ti. The overclocked version doesn't make quite a lot of sense for the creators there. For gaming, perhaps you gain extra, few FPS over there. But for creators, I don't see a big difference in the overclocked 3090 Ti. I'd rather go with, Asus TUF RTX 3090 Ti. It will run a little bit cooler and performs actually in some of the cases even better. Now, is it worth it for most people to go 3090 Ti for video editing? Not really. The 3090 Ti, if the price range is quite a bit less, compared to 3090 Ti, if we follow the MSRP, then the 3090 Ti is better bang for buck in the higher end of graphics cards. But I still see the RTX 3090 having a big benefit over the 3080 Ti just because of the VRAM capacity. If you're looking at the 3080 Ti and 3090, then sometimes the price difference of about a few $100s will be a big benefit for you and future-proof you a little bit from like your workflow. Let's say you suddenly jump to a project that has a larger video resolution from 6K to 8K, and you have to use some kind of multiple, like multicam, for example, of 6K, 8K, 4K or something like that. Then the 24 gigabytes of VRAM will be a big benefit for you. So I probably skip the 3080 Ti unless you get a big price. Go from 3080 12G, depending where you're gonna get there or which price it is, to 3090. That would kind of make sense to me. So last application we're going to be looking at is V-Ray. So if you're doing any of 3D rendering there, this here is quite a good scaling in terms of the GPU. The more you pay, the more performance you kind of get there as well. Bear in mind the VRAM difference there as well, and your projects might get a benefit from having more VRAM there as well. But the 3050 Ti and 3060, obviously there is a big jump there. And then 3060 to 3060 Ti, there's a huge jump there as well. About 18% from 3060 to 3060 Ti, and about 15% from 3050 to 3060. Then from there, we're gonna have like quite good jumps up there. But then when we reach about 3080 Ti to 3090 Ti, there is a little bit of a difference there, from about 7% jump up there. But in here, again, I don't see a big difference between 480 watt and 450 watt RTX 3090 Ti. They perform within 1% of each other. So now the RTX score of V-Ray. Basically here now we're looking at the performance of the RT cores, or the ray tracing cores of the NVIDIA graphics cards here. And the performance up is quite a big jump here from 3050 to 3060 Ti. We're seeing a similar thing, but there's a big difference whether you go from 3070 Ti to 3080 here as well. As you can see, from 3070 Ti to 3080, there's about 13% difference, which is is a big jump. So on the lower scale of things, of graphics cards here, if you're doing V-Ray, the more you spend, you're getting quite a bit performance. From 3050 to 3060, there's about 16% difference. From 3060 to 3060 Ti, there's about 15% difference. From 3060 Ti to 3070 is about 5% difference. 3060 Ti and 3070, often they are performing very, very similar. From 3070 to 3070 Ti, there's about 6% difference. And then from there, you know, we have a big jump there as well. But from 3080 10G to 3080 12G, even there is a measurable amount of difference, about 7% increase in performance. And from 3080 12G to 3080 Ti, we're seeing about 6% performance, you know, difference. But then from 3080 Ti to 3090, there's about 1 to 2% difference. And then from 3090 to actually 3080 Ti, which is the 400 watt version, overclocked version of 3080 Ti, there's about 4% difference. So the RT cores are actually faster on the RTX 3080 Ti compared to the 3090. We're looking at the ZOTAC 3090 Ti with 400 watts and Asus TUF 3090. And there from 3080 Ti to 3090 Ti with 480 watts, there's about 3% difference. So not that big of a difference on the higher end. But if you do want the best for V-Ray, and if you're a creator and time is money, then the 3090 Ti is still the best GPU in there. So overall, now we've gone through all of these different benchmarks and GPUs. And if you want to go back and really dig in deeper and see like how do these perform, then that's that. If you go with different kind of manufacturers of the GPU, bear in mind the DGP of the GPU and follow that in my guides, because you can go with like Noctua 3080, Asus EVGA, MSI or Asus or something like that. If it's 3080 with the same DGPU, they pretty much perform the same and you don't need to worry about like which is different and so on. Bear in mind, if you do want to see my GPU mistakes and buying guide, then go check them out in the description below. I'm going to leave those there as well. Those two videos will be very helpful for you to check out. Lastly, you might be wondering, why is there no AMD graphics cards here in this chart? And the first reason is that I've been really struggling to get hold of a lot of them, but then at the same time, knowing the history and then knowing my research, what I've done online, and the AMD graphics cards don't perform as well in terms of best bang for buck for creators there. In some of the cases they do, but especially for 3D, they're not so, helpful. But if you do want to see any of the AMD graphics cards benchmarked, let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to check some of them out. Anyway, thanks guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Likes and subs, and bye-bye.